Welcome to EPG Pathshala. The module name is Processes of Disintegration at the Regional Level in India. Let me introduce myself. I am Ashutosh Kumar. I am a professor in Punjab University, Chandigarh, and I also happen to be the principal investigator in the subject of political science. In this module, what we are going to discuss is that what have been the processes, what have been the factors that have led to the rise of the forces of disintegration in Indian Union, especially with focus on post-independent India. And here in this module, we are going to refer to certain cases like the parts where the forces of disintegration, the secessionist forces, the autonomist forces have come up in a big way, and how they have threatened the national unity and integrity of India. So here what we are discussing is, in this module, that despite the effort of the constitution makers of India, who recognized the differences, who also provided for some safeguards for the national minorities, and also provided for establishment of a secular polity, and also a kind of economic model which was adopted by the Indian political leaders, which was called development planning model. There was always an attempt to have a kind of a balanced regional growth, and also to give a feeling to everyone, different communities of India, that they were looked after, and they would be, their interest, their rights would be safeguarded. So we have several provisions in our constitution, and in fact when we refer to the directive principles, we also refer to like Article 38, where there is a provision that the regional imbalances should be taken care of. So despite all those attempts, we have this problem of integration which has been there, and that has been very natural, as we are going to discuss in this module, because the territorial differences, the demographical differences, the spatial differences, the different communities, different religion, different languages, different kind of caste. So all these factors, they have really impacted upon the way the political processes have unfolded in India. In fact, the social cleavages have been politicized, they have been mobilized by the political class, different political parties, for their electoral dividend. That has been also a factor. In this module, we are going to discuss the certain case studies where we find that there has been a rise of secessionist tendencies or autonomous tendencies. We refer to the case study of Punjab, as we know that in Punjab we had this regional movement. Initially it was demand for a Punjabi Suba, which was a secessionist demand, but it was not accepted, which was not a secessionist demand, sorry, but it was not accepted on the basis that demand was communal, and in a secular polity this demand could not have been accepted. So when in 1956 the reorganization of the state took place, Punjabi Suba demand was not granted. But afterwards, in 1966, finally Punjab became the last state which was reorganized on the linguistic basis, when the demand of the Akalis was on the basis of language rather than on religion. So in fact 1956, this State Reorganization Commission considered the demand for reorganization of the state on the linguistic basis, cultural basis, and it also saw that those states which were going to be created, they were going to be self-sufficient, they were going to have a social and social unity and social cohesiveness, and they were not really going to be threaten the unity and integrity of India. So those demands were not potentially secessionist demands. So all those factors were taken into consideration by the State Reorganization Commission. And in fact, if you see the Punjab, except for some period like the 70s and the 80s, when this Khalistan movement, this demand for Khalistan was raised by some elements in Punjab, which was there. We can see the other case studies also. We can see the Assam. There also there has been a movement against the foreigners coming and settling down, especially the Bengali Muslims coming from East Pakistan and then from Bangladesh, settling down there and taking away the jobs of the local people. So that has been the illegal immigrants and all, Assam. Then you can refer to the Bodos. Bodos have been also asking for the preservation of their rights. And then you have other demands coming up from, say, Jammu and Kashmir, which is a separate kind of unique case because Jammu and Kashmir became part of India under extraordinary circumstances and they were promised the special constitutional status. And there are many people in Jammu and Kashmir who feel that the autonomous status has been eroded and there has been the extension of the union government jurisdiction over Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, Pakistan factor is also there, which has been promoting the secessionist tendencies in the valley of Kashmir. Then we also have other areas where there has been tendency to promote the feeling of alienation and feeling of separatism, and we can refer to the linguistic problem in the South India, especially in the then state of Madras, where the Dravidian movement was launched and there was a demand for Dravidistan. So there was also this demand that the North Indian domination or the domination of Hindi or the Aryans should not be tolerated. So the demand had the linguistic as well as racial connotations in those days. So now we can see that even now in India, there are some areas, as we are going to see in this module, there are certain pockets, there are certain territories, certain part of Indian Union where the demand for secessionism or demand for autonomy, so both secessionist politics as well as autonomist politics in the Northeast, in Jammu and Kashmir, still is very active. Though Punjab problem has been resolved, though with the use of force and all, but many of the demands have been also considered. But overall, we can say that with the adoption of the three-language formula, with the reorganization of the states on linguistic and cultural basis, and then on the basis of the demand for greater development, greater democracy, Indian Union has been able to meet the regionalist demands which have been coming from different parts of the country. And even when there has been a demand still there in some parts, over the period there has been a greater realization on the part of the Indian political leadership that these demands, these situations should not be seen as a law and order situation. The use of force is not going to be sufficient to meet the meet the demands of the secessionists or the autonomist forces. Basically, these are the political demands, and they should be met only with the political solutions, political measures, and that there has been a greater realization on the part of the central state, and that's why the democratic institutions, democratic rights, and the rule of law and the governance, they all have been taken care of, and there has been a greater focus on these aspects so that the local population should not feel alienated. So a region is a territory inhabited by socially distinct groups who share some common interests and cultural characteristics. People who share the same terrain and climate, who cope up with the similar environment and have similar cultural characteristics, tend to develop a degree of common identity. In India, regional consciousness emerged during the anti-colonial struggle. So, at the same time, national consciousness emerged. When people began to imagine a nation called India, they also became conscious that they belong to a particular region which has a particular culture, history, language, and so on. The imagination of nation was not contrary to regional identity formation. In fact, they were complementary to each other. So, the regional heroes like Shivaji or Rana Pratap, they were also invoked as the iconic figure in the nationalist movement to evoke the nationalist spirit and not only the regional identity. Under the British administration, There was no one principal organizing provinces. Various regions were attached to the British Empire at different times, and they were incorporated into different provinces according to administrative convenience. So, provinces included varied cultural, linguistic communities and regions. For example, Bombay province included some parts of Karnataka and Gujarat, Western Maharashtra as well as Sindh. The Indian National Congress was in favor of the linguistic reorganization of the states during the colonial period. However, in the post-independence period, the national leaders felt that the reorganization of states on linguistic basis might lead to creation of many nations within India, and hence they were hesitant to concede to the demand. This led to mass movements in various parts of the country, starting from Andhra, and finally the central government had to reconsider its position. The State Reorganization Act was passed in 1956. Various linguistic states were created in late 50s and 60s. This consolidated the regional sentiments to an extent. Now, when we discuss about the moments of disintegration, secessionist movement, Khalistan movement, the process of the reorganization of the states, a principle was strictly followed that no state would be formed on religious lines. Thus, in 1950s, the demand for the formation of Punjabi Suba on religious lines was turned down by the centre. The central government finally agreed to carve out the states of Punjab and Haryana in 1966, not on religious basis but on linguistic basis. In 1970s, some Sikh leaders began to appeal for a separate sovereign Sikh state called Khalistan, a land of Khalsa. In 1978, the famous Anandpur Sahib resolution was passed by Shiromani Akali Dal, which called for greater autonomy for the state of Punjab and protection of the cultural and religious rights of the Sikhs. The other demands were transfer of Chandigarh to Punjab, which was jointly capital of Punjab and Haryana since 1966 after the reorganization of the state of Punjab. More share in river waters. 1980s witnessed the rise of Sikh fundamentalism, a bitter and extremely violent confrontation between the militant orthodox Sikh groups and heterodox Hindu Sikh sect, the Nirankaris, developed in Punjab. The Sant Bhindranwale, a Sikh preacher who sought the consolidation of the Sikh community, the purification of its practices through enforcement of the elements of the traditional Sikh disciples, and the reclamation of the Sikhs, became extremely influential. Violence in Punjab escalated from 1982 1983 with attacks on policemen and political figures, and it became the order of the day. And shaken by the scale of the violence, and some incidents of violence also targeted killing of the Hindus traveling on a public transport. So it all took a communal color, and as such the president rule was imposed in 1983. Bhindranwale and his followers took refuge in the Golden Temple, and the army was called upon to remove the militants in an operation that was called Operation Blue Star, and it happened in 1984. This led to the assassination of the Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who was killed by her own bodyguard, Sikh bodyguard, and it basically resulted into a violent anti-Sikh riots. This series of events catalyzed a militant and violent campaign for a separate state of Khalistan. The movement was curbed in 90s with the help of police and military. We can refer to Assam and the Northeast. At the time of independence, the state of Assam included Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya. Very soon after the independence, the explicit secessionist demands were raised by tribal communities in the northeastern India, prominently by Nagas and Mizos. They asserted that the hill districts have historically lived apart from India, and that they are not Indians at all. Since 1952, the hill districts of Assam enjoyed constitutional safeguards. The demand for Naga secession was initially suppressed by the central government with the help of the military, but after prolonged negotiation, it agreed to form the state of Nagaland in 1960. Similarly, Mizos, who were unhappy with the Assam government's inability to provide adequate relief during the famine of 1959, staged a major uprising in 1966 and declared independence of Mizoram. It was suppressed too, but the Mizo Hill district was detached from the state of Assam to convert it into a union territory. However, some insurgent activities persisted till 1980s. Assam was also a part of Bengal presidency during the British rule. A number of administrative positions were occupied by Bengali speakers. Bengali was the principal medium of instruction in schools in Assam. The dominance of Bengali speakers in both the private and public sectors continued even after independence. This gave rise to conflict between Assamese and Bengalis over the language issue. While the Assamese pushed for their mother tongue as the sole official language of administration and medium of instruction, the Bengalis demanded the dual language policy. The issue provoked riots in 1960 after the passage of Act making Assamese the sole official language. In the early 20th century, Bengali Muslims had migrated to Assam in huge numbers, which had changed religious composition in Assam. During Bangladesh War of 1971, there were again massive influx of refugees from East Bengal to Assam. Minor Wiener informs that it is estimated that between 1951 to 1961, more than 2 lakh Bengali Muslims, almost all illegally from East Pakistan, entered the state. 1971 to 1981, around 1.8 million migrants came to Assam. The increasing percentage of the Bengalis, especially the Bengali Muslims, worried the local ethnic Assamese population. An anti-immigrant movement, dubbed as anti-foreigner movement, was launched in 1979, demanding the expulsion of the illegal migrants who entered the state from Bangladesh after 1961. Most of them were Bengali Muslims. Civil disobedience paralyzed the economy and the state. It soon grew into the broader conflict between the Assamese tribals and the Bengalis living in the state. The movement took anti-Indian overtones also over the period. In the early months of 1983, the Assamese and the local tribals violently turned against Bengal immigrants. 4,000 people were massacred. 250,000 were made homeless and thousands fled the state. In 1990s, the militant and the violent movement re-emerged after President's rule was imposed on Assam. By 1992, the movement was weakened and the leaders of the movement agreed to seek solution to the grievances of the Assamese people within constitutional framework. Meanwhile, Bodos, a tribal community in Assam, dissatisfied because of the loss of the land to non-tribal people, encroachment of the refugees in their homeland, availability of Bodo language as a medium of instruction in the schools of the state, joined anti-migrant movement. A separate state of Bodo land was demanded. Bodo movement turned violent in 1988 and 1999. Ultimately, Bodo leaders agreed to accept the Bodo Autonomous Council within Assam instead of a separate Bodo land. While there are agitations against the foreigners in Assam, the people from Northeast are met with an unwelcoming attitude in the rest of India, especially metropolitan cities. In many places in India, the people from the Northeast are identified as the East Asian because of their facial features and often considered as foreigners. This is a kind of racial discrimination against the Northeast and certainly lacks spirit of national integration. The problems in Assam and the Northeast are not solved fully even to the day. Now we come to the Jammu and Kashmir. In case of Kashmir, issue of integration is intertwined with international politics. Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state under a colonial rule. At the time of independence, most of the princely states were integrated to India, but the Maharaja of Kashmir was named Hari Singh. But then very soon, when Kashmir was invaded by Pakistani tribesmen and other districts in the state declared independence from the ruler, the Maharaja sought the military assistance from India. He had to sign the instrument of accession with India, ceding Kashmir to India. However, it enjoyed a special autonomous status under Article 370, which limits the power of the Indian Parliament to legislate. Also, one is required to be a citizen of Jammu Kashmir for state employment and buying property there. The special status of Jammu Kashmir has always been a point of contention. The right-wing people in India view this provision as a threat to the integrity of India, and insist that the article should be abrogated. Some others also say that this autonomy of the region is not really needed. As we know that Indian state has followed the policy of legal and political integration of Jammu Kashmir into the Indian Federation. For that purpose, Constitution, the Article 370 has paved the way for the passing of the President Constitutional Order, which have been made applicable to Jammu Kashmir. 1989 onwards, while some organizations for independent Kashmir with the restoration of the pre-1947 boundaries of the state, others insist on the unification of the state with Pakistan. There are other movements and disputes also. One can refer to like Shiv Sena movement against the South Indians in Mumbai in 1960s and 70s. Shiv Sena also asked for 80% reservation for the local people, son of the soil policy. Then it also led to the Shiv Sena was also responsible for inciting the Karnataka-Maharashtra border dispute, and has been held responsible by some authors for the riots which took place in 1969. There have been other border disputes also, inter-river water disputes also involving many states. Kaveri, Krishna, Godavari, Narmada, these all are interstate rivers, and there have been dispute over their water involving different states of India. Regional imbalance is another factor which has been there. The socio-economic inequalities have been a major factor working against integration. At the root of most of the identity-based movements lie the economic regions. As we saw in many cases, the economic resources, there has been also a feeling of deprivation of socio-economic justice, which has also led to secessionist tendencies and the chauvinist movements. The level of economic, infrastructural and social development in various states in India varies to a great extent. When we see the economic development in India, it has centered around few metropolitan cities. So disparities in the economic and the social developmental process across the regions, and the inter-regional disparities among the different segments of the society, they both have been the major plan for adopting planning process. But we know that despite having the development planning process, the considerable level of regional disparity has continued there, and accelerated economic growth since the early 90s after the adoption of the new economic policy, India being one of the fastest growing economy in the world, it has not really led to the problem of regional disparity, which has increased over the period, with some states getting all kind of investments, other states really being left out. Processes of disintegration, national disintegration at the regional level. Let me conclude this module by saying that we can define a region as a territory where the people have common interest and they also share common cultural characteristics. So regions can be seen as historically constituted cultural, geographical region. So the regions can be also economic regions, but here in this module we were more concerned about region as political regions. As we know, right from the colonial days during the freedom struggle, when national consciousness came up, the regional consciousness came simultaneously. So when you had this Rabindranath Tagore writing about Jana Mana Gan, he also wrote Amar Sonar Bangla. So there was this regional consciousness and the national consciousness, they went hand in hand. And Congress was also very aware about the linguistic demands, and that's why as early as in 1905, the Congress reconstituted its local organization on linguistic basis. In 1920, Nagpur session, Congress again passed a resolution for the recognition of the linguistic communities. And 1928 Nehru report also talked about the formation of the linguistic states. So there was always this consciousness and awareness about that the need to incorporate, accommodate the regionalist demands, regionalist feelings in India. After independence also, we had this situation where the many areas of India, they had the demand for separate states on the linguistic basis. And that's why this Andhra Pradesh came into existence as the first linguistic states, and then we had the Reorganization Commission in 1956, as you have seen reading through the module. And then like lots of efforts were taken. Even in the Constitution, if you read Article 38, it not only talks about the need to bridge the gap among the classes, it also says the need to bridge the gap among the regions. So development planning model was basically adopted in order to have a balanced regional growth rate. So over the period, there has been an attempt on the part of the central state to accommodate the regional demands and to meet the demands of the separate regions and to develop the regions. But what has happened over the years is that some of these demands have remained there. They have not been able to be fulfilled. One can refer to the failure of the development planning model also to do away with this rich state, poor state syndrome. And unfortunately, under the new economic policy, while India has developed, India has grown at a very fast rate, India has been one of the fastest growing economy, the regional disparities have increased. So that has been one of the factors why there are many regions where the people feel that they are economically deprived, and that leads to the feeling of disintegration or feeling of alienation. And there are other things also. Political processes are also responsible. As you know, like we can take, like in this model we refer to Jammu and Kashmir, where some people feel that the promises made at the time of integration of Jammu and Kashmir to India have not been met. Their special constitutional status has not been maintained. You have Assam, where there has been a feeling that why the foreigners have come up and they have been given citizenship. Why shouldn't they leave the Assam? Because any mass scale migration of the people cost the jobs of the local people. We also saw that the language was a major issue which has been tackled with the introduction of the 3-language formula. And that's why, like, with reorganization of the state, especially in the South India, has really helped in the promotion of the national unity, cohesiveness. So language is no longer such a divisive issue in today's India. Likewise, you can refer to this religion. That's also because it's all scattered. The religious communities are scattered. This has not also been a major problem, but the problem has been about the demand for autonomy, demand for the respect of the state's authority, states' autonomy, and resistance against the central undue interference in the affairs of the states. So the basic idea is that we can have a truly federal polity and economy, and where the states are given their due place, and where the demands of the disgruntled people can be taken up for their redressal. Only then India can be able to overcome the forces of disintegration. So we saw in this module that the solution does not lie in the use of force. Of course, some kind of force has to be used, like in the case of Kashmir, to meet the threat of the militants, but basically the demand has to be met politically, and the economic measures have to be taken. So rich state, poor state syndrome, intra-state disparities, then the preserving the canons of the constitution and respecting the rights of the states. All these factors are very important. The minorities, their rights have to be, linguistic minorities, cultural minorities, ethnic minorities, their rights, their autonomy have to be respected. Only then we can have a truly national integration. Otherwise, disintegrative forces are going to continue to play an important role in independent India.